And that is what is happening to us today in our society. As we depart from the Word of God as being the final authority for our faith and our practice, as we depart from the Word of God as being the final authority about what is moral and what is immoral, what is right and what is wrong, when the Word of God is no longer the final standard, when we no longer have an independent arbiter, God's holy Word, then we do what's right in our own eyes. And we do what brings us pleasure. And we do what makes us feel good. And when we do what makes us feel good, what rights in our own eyes, we become very, very irresponsible, very indulgent. And that's where we are in our society today. And so we are in a society, we're so removed from the book. We're so removed from God's biblical standards for morality and God's biblical standards for right and wrong and God's biblical standards for responsibility that men can father children and walk off and act like they don't even exist. Something that they have created, something that is a part of them, their DNA, their chromosomes, their makeup, something that's going to be in their image without any sense of responsibility or obligation to make sure that those children have what they need. That is how far we have fallen. We think that we have become sophisticated. We think that we are evolving. We're not evolving morally. We're not evolving spiritually. We're not even evolving intellectually. We are devolving. We are becoming more animalistic. We're becoming less human and more like animals. In the animal kingdom, there are some animals that don't even take care of their kids. And there are some that do. So in some regards, there are some animals that's better than what we're doing today. This is a serious conversation, a serious discussion that needs to be had. We got to say out loud what many people are thinking beneath the breath and what many people are thinking inside of their mind. The true test of our character, the true test of what's inside of us is how do we treat the people that we can run over, that we can dominate, that we can abuse, that we can physically control. How do we treat them? That is the true test of our character. And when you use that criteria to examine the United States of America, when you use that criteria to examine the state of West Virginia, to examine Kanawha County and Charleston, I tell you what, we're not scoring very high. We're not scoring very high. And I'm not going to bore you with a lot of numbers and statistics, but there are some that are noteworthy. In my research, I found, and I've shared this before, that in this state, they did a study in every major birthing hospitals in West Virginia in 2009, I believe it was. And what they did, they tested the mother and the afterbirth and the baby for substance abuses on every birth that occurred in a major birthing hospital. And to everybody's chagrin and surprise, they were blown away with the statistics. 20%, 1 out of every 5 babies that are born to a mother in the state of West Virginia is born to a mother that has severely abused alcohol and or legal or prescription drugs. Not just a drink every now and then, severe abuse. 20% in Charleston, it was almost 25%. That means 1 of every 4 babies basically are being messed up in their mother's womb by their mother and by her consumption of illegal substances or legal substances that are being abused. They couldn't even quantify and put a figure on how many babies are being traumatized inside their mother's womb because the mother is exposed to domestic violence or domestic abuse or in a hostile situation. But the number 1 crime committed in the United States of America, the number 1 crime committed in West Virginia, Kanawha County, is domestic violence. 7,000 a year, domestic violence petitions filed in Kanawha County alone. That's not the state, just in Kanawha County. And many of them are filed by women that are pregnant. Now, all the research is in. Now we're no longer guessing. We now know for sure and for certain what happens inside the mother's womb during that 9-month period has a tremendous determination on that kid's intellectual capacity, on their social and emotional makeup, And there are certain things that if it doesn't happen, or if certain things do happen, that child can be marginalized in terms of their learning capacity for the rest of their lives, and no matter what you do after they get here, you can't compensate for what's happened inside the mother's womb. Are y'all listening to me? Now, we know this now. This has been scientifically proven as doctors have studied the fetal development and when the brain starts to develop and how the brain starts to wire and the circuitry of the brain when that's taken inside the mother's womb. And the capacity for the child to learn after they get here is determined while they're inside of the mother's womb. So now we have such a hostile environment right now that the children are under assault where they're in what is supposed to be the safest place in all of the world, the true test of our character. But you could fast forward this. You would be amazed at the number of child abuse and neglect cases. As a matter of fact, West Virginia has one of the highest rates of child abuse and or neglect in the United States of America. We have hundreds of children that have been removed from their homes because they've been not fed, or they've been beaten, or they've been sexually molested. We have hundreds that are in out-of-state placements in hospitals outside of the state of West Virginia. We spend millions of dollars every year. These kids are out of mind, and they're off the radar screen of many people. But these are the same group of folk that age out of these systems. And some of the same group are the same ones that once they age out and they hit the streets and they murder people, or they are murdered, or they're sexually assaulted, or they sexually assault someone else. We have raised them. Our neglect of them, our abuse of them, our indifference toward them has resulted in them disconnecting from us. So they don't think the way we want them to think. They don't believe what we want them to believe. They don't value what we want them to value. The true test of our character. How do we treat the children that is among us, that is in our midst? And so they're being assaulted inside the mother's womb. They're being assaulted outside of the mother's womb. They have been abandoned. 500,000 children in the United States in the foster care system, 500,000 kids in the foster care system. Now, the last time I looked, and I can't get an accurate count, but my good friend David Olson out in Minneapolis, Minnesota, he did all this research, and he says there's at least 400,000 churches in America. At least 400,000 that he could identify. Now you do the math. If there's 400,000 children in America, all it would take, 400,000 churches, all it would take was basically for one church to find one family that would take in one foster care child, and we could put the foster care system out of business. This is simple mathematics. Everybody can't do that, but surely we can find one family in every church in America that has enough compassion for what's happening with children, and we could rally the rest of the troops around this. So I'm sending out a call this morning. Somebody need to pray about this. We need to identify one family from the Grace Bible Church that will become foster parents, and then we are going to rally around them and support them so that they don't have that burden all by themselves, but that we want to try to do our part to try to address this problem of kids in the foster care system in the state of West Virginia. Are y'all listening to me? They brought in this Catholic priest from Chicago. I can't recall his name at the moment, but he's the first Catholic priest in America to ever adopt a child. And so he started a program, One Church, One Child, and went on this crusade around the country trying to get churches to identify congregants. And if every church in America could identify one family that would adopt one child, then basically the church could put the adoption people out of business, and we could just about close every orphanage in America. This is just numbers. This is just statistics. So on our way to shout and high-fiving and dancing and going to conferences and concerts and all this spiritual activity we're engaged in, we're failing to realize there is a call, there is a summons, there is a cry from the most vulnerable population in our society saying we need the church's help. We need the church's attention. Can I just talk to you for a moment? I'm not trying to make you feel guilty, but I am trying to help us understand if there is a God in heaven, we are going to pay for this. And if I understand the Bible correctly, it says that judgment will first begin where? At the house of God. And so part of what is happening